I went hitchhiking alone in the Alps when I was young. The thing I met there has followed me ever since. So this happened to me over 4 decades ago. I went hitchhiking alone in the Valais Alps as a late birthday gift to myself. I was a lot more adventurous in those days, back before age and responsibilities could tether me down. The Valais Alps were the latest in a long line of achievements, and the largest by far. Remote, rugged, with a long history of death. Exactly what an aspiring adventurer like myself relished. And at more than 6,000 feet above sea level, it was everything I was looking for and more. The trip itself had started out pretty much as expected. I made my way across, my newly purchased hiking boots putting in good work as I followed along the ridgeline. For the longest time, I hiked alone. In fact, except for the occasional goat or two, it was just me and the mountains and God. It was towards the end of the 3rd day that I first began to suspect something was off. I'd been navigating a particularly hairy pass when, on an off chance, my eyes had flitted to the valley floor below, and I'd seen a figure standing there, watching me. It had been several hundred feet away, little more than a speck. The sudden sight of it had caused me to flinch. Being so remote, you just don't expect to see anybody else out here. When my surprise had passed, I raised a hand in a wave. However, the figure did not wave back. Didn't move at all, in fact. And it was only then that I realized what it was I was looking at. To this day, I don't know what compelled me to go take a closer look. I reached it a good 40 minutes later. It was about 6 feet tall, dressed in a long purple coat and faded gray slacks. Reams of straw poked out from within its tattered collar, below which a red handkerchief lay loosely tied, faded by the sun. A block of carved wood comprised its head, with little charcoal smears for eyes. Looking down, I saw a set of rosary beads had been draped over its shoulders, along with something else that I didn't recognize, but that looked to be made out of little intertwined twigs or sticks. Some kind of, totem? I'd learned about them during my time with the Valais villagers the day before. The Bergführer called them Stadtmannli, or Little Standing Man, rudimentary effigies intended as surrogate sacrifices for the ancient gods that lived on the mountain. The idea was that by creating these proxy offerings, you could effectively trick the gods into allowing you safe passage, or at least, so the story went. Without thinking, I reached out and unhooked the totem from its shoulders. I knew it was wrong to take it. The villagers had warned me as such, that to interfere with them in any way would bring bad luck. But of course, that was just superstition, and whatever else I may have been, superstitious I was not. And so I had continued on with my hike, and by that night I'd all but forgotten about the Little Standing Man. But then, the following day, while breasting a snow-blasted ridgeline just east of the pass, I'd seen another one. I'd had my head down at the time, my attention focused fixedly on my feet, when I'd looked up suddenly to find another one of the Stadtmannli standing propped no more than 10 feet away from where I stood. I'd been so focused on where I was walking, I hadn't spotted the figure until I was practically right on top of it, and the sudden sight of it almost gave me a heart attack. Once my heart had stopped trying to beat itself out of my chest, I walked over for a better look, and it was as I got closer that an alarming thought suddenly occurred to me. No, not another one. This is the same one from yesterday. It was impossible, of course. Since spotting the Stadtmannli yesterday, I'd traveled approximately 12 miles. No way it could be the same one. And yet, as I neared, I thought I recognized the dark smears of its eyes the ugly, jagged slash of its mouth. I stared dumbfounded at it a moment, unease settling in, just as a fierce wind began to whistle down from the ridge above, almost as if to mark the occasion. Though I had come here for the express purpose of being by myself, I had up until then that point yet to feel truly alone. But standing there under the Stanmali's gaze, I became painfully aware of just how isolated I was. Were there something to happen to me way out here, there would be nobody to call for help. I would be on my own. That night, sleep came uneasy. I dreamed I was in a field of enormous white lilies. The standing thing stood propped in the center, a grotesque blemish on an otherwise idyllic scene. But then I blinked, and in the way of dreams, suddenly I was the standing thing, strapped to a pole, hands and feet gone, reams of bloody straw jutting out from the stumps of where they'd been, my eyeless face fixed in a silent death scream. I jolted awake to the sound of rain lashing my tent. A fierce storm had rolled in while I slept, the combination of wind and rain, a hellish symphony for my waking brain. But it wasn't that which had roused me. I sat up straight in my sleeping bag, panicked and alert, and not sure exactly why. Then I heard it again, a dragging sound, like something heavy being pulled over dirt, audible even over the hiss of the rain. Every part of me froze. I sat there in the dark, my sleeping bag pulled tight around me, feeling more afraid than I'd ever been as a single thought echoed around inside my skull. It's him. It's the Stanmali. He's come for his totem. I knew it was ridiculous. The notion that the standing thing had followed me, that it had dragged itself all these miles. It was nonsense. The stuff of fantasy. Hello? The sound suddenly stopped. Summoning all my courage, I leaned forward and gently pried open the tent flap. Nothing, just sheets of freezing rain and sleet and the vague outlines of rocks and trees in the dark. Knowing I wouldn't be able to fall asleep again until I checked, I quickly threw some clothes on and fumbled my way out of the tent. The rain soaked me almost at once as I shone my flashlight around, the light cutting through the deluge ahead like a white blade through a black curtain. I was a good 20 yards away from my tent when I happened to shine the beam down, my eyes immediately falling on the deep gouge in the dirt by my feet, and I gasped, almost falling backward in my surprise. No way. That's impossible. Like in a dream, I shone the flashlight in the direction the gouge was heading, following it back toward my tent, my hands shaking. To this day, I struggle to describe exactly what I saw next. There had been a flash of purple. The beam caught on it for the briefest of instants. The sodden folds of a long coat plastered tight to something that shouldn't have been there, that couldn't have been, standing propped now between me and my tent. The sight of it broke something inside me. I made a noise like a kicked dog, and then turned and started running back down the ridgeline, boots slipping and skidding on the waterlogged dirt, almost spilling me over multiple times as I fought to push as much distance between me and the standing thing as possible. I ran and I ran, heedless of the danger, my entire body consumed only with the need to get clear, to get away. It was only by sheer luck that I spotted the pillbox. I had been running at near full sprint, flashlight swinging wildly through the darkness, until finally my foot had caught on a patch of loose shale and I'd skidded sideways, slamming hard on my side and immediately knocking the wind out of me. When I could breathe again, I'd made to pick myself up, and it was then that I'd spotted it, a block of thick concrete jutting out from the side of the mountain to my right, some kind of old, military bunker? I threw myself at it at once, passing under the thick concrete awning that comprised its entrance, my flashlight illuminating the thick cobwebs and dust. The reek of mildew hit me as I stumbled farther inside, unsure of where I was going, compelled only by the urge to get as far away as possible. I found a corner and quickly switched off the light. I hunkered there in the dark, soaked and shivering, staring back the way I'd come. I felt feverish with terror. To make matters worse, at some point I'd apparently also split my palm, the hot sting throbbing maddeningly as fresh blood slicked to my fingers, making gripping the flashlight difficult. I tried to make sense of what I had just seen. Could it be it had been there the whole time? Only, given how tired I was at the time I'd come to set up camp, I'd somehow completely overlooked it? Hell, was that even possible? I continued to stand there, panting and shaking, the only sounds the hiss of the rain, coupled with my own panicked breathing. But then, I heard it again. Coming from just outside. I clamped a hand over my mouth to stifle a scream. At the same time, the flashlight slipped from my grasp, clattering on the pillbox's hard concrete floor a moment before rolling off into darkness. I immediately dove after it, hands pawing at the cold floor, but it was useless. The flashlight was lost. Panicked, I crawled into the nearest corner and made myself as small as I could. The dragging sound grew steadily louder and louder, until finally it was right across the room from me, though I, of course, couldn't see it. Couldn't see anything at all. The smell of what might have been old, sodden straw filled the space, heady and overwhelming, so strong I could almost taste it. Then, the dragging suddenly stopped. I held my hands over my mouth and waited, but the sound did not resume. A terrible montage of possibilities flashed across my mind, each one more horrific than the last, and all at once I was glad for the darkness, as to see the thing that stood now across the space from me would surely drive me mad. I fumbled for the totem in my pocket. "Here, just take it." I threw it across the room. There was no clatter, no sound of the totem landing, just the indifferent sound of the rain falling outside, and for a moment I wondered if I had really gone mad after all. My thoughts were interrupted as a single bout of lightning flashed outside, and in the momentary light I saw the standing figure propped with its face now less than 6 inches from my own. I do not recall much of what happened next. The Barkführer found me the very next morning, propped barely conscious next to a slab of moss-covered rock. I'd run through the night until my body had given out, and in the process contracted a pretty severe case of exposure-induced hypothermia, none of which I recall. The last thing I remember is turning to shoot one final glance up at the pillbox, finding the Stanmali standing propped in the front of its entrance, watching me as I fled, an image that haunts me to this very day. That was over 40 years ago. Every year since then, on my birthday, it visits me. I find them everywhere, on my porch, the hood of my car, my windowsill, little trinkets made of intertwined twigs and sticks. I know why, of course. It's to remind me that it hasn't forgotten, that it isn't over. You took it, now it's yours. I'm sick, lung cancer. This will be my last birthday. I sit and stare out of the darkness from my hospice room window. I think the stun Molly will come for me tonight.